Through the Mayor, we received some informal questions from Councillors Beniliotis, Councillor de Graaf and Councillor Olsen. Responses were emailed out today and they are available in your yellow folders.
Councillor Eaton, wishing to move a motion?
I actually had an alternative motion and I hope staff have got it typed in, but it's actually looking at referring it to the financial working group for some further analysis and the implications that it's going to have on our budget. And I think that's a process that we could sit here for an hour, 2 hours discussing the pros and cons and the financial implications. This way we get a group of other people, sit together, go through it, do the analysis, look at the implications are, and then bring a report back to council for confirmation. Thank you.
Happy to second, Councillor Beniliotis.
Yeah, if I can ask a question as well.
Go ahead. Yep.
I just want to ask council staff, was there any consideration of looking at any savings that could have been achieved to address the retrospective payments for the rate cap for primary producers? Was that looked at all?
Through the Mayor, the budget already has $2 million of savings built into it. So we would need to find savings on top of those we haven't yet fully identified. So they weren't really considered because we already have such an ambitious target there.
If there's no further debate, Councillor de Graaf.
I have got some debate actually. Sorry, I was just waiting to hear what other people said. So the councillors, including myself, got an email this afternoon from the Onkaparinga Council watch page, and it's about this matter. So I just feel it's relevant to read it out. So I'm going to read it. Tonight's council meeting will consider a retrospective rate cap for the primary production PP rate category. 80% of our primary production rateable properties have been affected by substantial rate increases. The average valuation increase per property is $76,700 compared to the prior year. It was well documented in Council's own literature when setting the rates at the primary production rate category, along with commercial and industrial categories, were in for a big hit with rate increases due to valuation increases. Despite this, the Council consciously chose to not implement a rate cap in these categories when setting the budget and declaring the rates. Onkaparinga Council watched discussions prompted some councillors to ask some questions in the chamber. Tonight's council agenda item asserts no concerns were raised about primary reduction rates prior to setting rates policy. So I'm just so the council will consider if it will or will not provide retrospective rate cap of 10% affecting 569 primary production properties at a cost of $195,000 or 20% rate cap affecting 855 primary production properties at a cost of $97,000. So I'm just going to leave that there, and whilst I think, you know, what Councillor Eaton is saying is relevant, we had a motion on the board there to look at a rate cap of either 20% or 10%. And I think that it's really clear that these residents have been really unfairly hit. And so I'm going to suggest that if this one doesn't come up, that I would be happy to move the motion that caps that at 10%.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'll get on my bandwagon. I was on the rates committee. That we used to have a committee of council, and we really got into it. It was not done with the full chamber. We could really chew the fat on it. This was warned that would happen with the primary production as people move further south and have bigger properties or so forth, that the few that are left are going to be burdened with it all the time. I've been told to say that you're ripping us off, that rightfully that they shouldn't be charged this particular fee, and that was 4 or 5 people, that none of them have actually been listed in the 3 complaints. But I see Councillor Eaton's big picture, of having a finance working group, which I'd like to be. I think it'd be good to have a couple of elected members on so that we're savvy with all of this, to go through it, because it has hit and I know there's about 4 others that are primary production that are in the process of being delisted, which means it impacts the existing ones. So we really need to clearly look at it, and I think this is the process of, rather than just ad hoc doing something. As I said, the 195,000 you're charging us too much anyway, we should have got it. But by actually reviewing the current rating policy and consider the implications for 21-22, I think that's a better way of going at it.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. Just to increase my knowledge around it, just the finance working group, if I could ask a question of the officers, what would be the expectations in terms of the discussions and timeframes and what you're looking to achieve? I know that it's sort of been thrust upon you in coming up with a report, but the report's been generated. I've enjoyed reading the report. I think I've got a good handle on what's going on. I'm not quite sure, even though Councillor Brown is, her viewpoint is that the finance working group, would add value to this. Could you just go through for me the actual mechanisms or how it would proceed? Because I came here sort of pretty convinced that I could see the recommendation or the option that I was going to vote for. So I've just, in terms of Councillor Eaton's motion, how would it work, and what are we going to really nut out, or how are we going to get a better outcome than the information that's been provided to us in the report?
Through the chair, I'll take your first question. No, which is, I think we've already got a lot of the data, so we would be looking at delving a bit deeper into the detail, I guess. And so we're just talking, then we think we could probably do that in 2 meetings. So that would be subject to when we call the first one and then how much room we have between the second one. So within a month or 6 weeks, I would say. The second one, whether we get any more enlightenment or not, that I couldn't tell you until we get into that detail.
Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question to start with. The 10% rate cap policy that we have on residential properties, just say if someone had a 19% rate increase in 1 year, does that 9% disappear, or does that get dispersed throughout the whole city? Or
So through the Mayor, at the time of setting the rate, that extra 9% would be dispersed amongst the remaining properties within that land use category.
okay, and is it fair to say that there's a lot more residential properties to spread that load compared to primary production properties?
Through the Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, I'll move to debate if I can. Look, I'm actually not going to support this. I would much prefer supporting just to stick with the guns we've got. And sometimes I find it quite incredible that certain former councillors can send an email and have their email read out in this chamber, almost like they're sitting here again with us in this chamber. For those, and it's interesting to have a look at the record, when we met at our EM session and we went through all the details of what this means, to have this 10% rate cap does mean that, that money has to come from somewhere. We've got a tight budget. We've gone here and delivered 2 years of really tight budgets to make sure we can keep rates low for our entire community. So that money doesn't just disappear. We need to get it from somewhere if we have a rate cap. During the EM session, and it's interesting that people that might not have been on the EM session didn't look at the levers that we had to help the primary production industry, because we did identify it at that time. It's true. We identified that the rate capping situation would be actually really bad for our primary production, because if you were a mum and dad small family property and had a 19% rate increase, or maybe you didn't have any rate increase in your property, a lot of the big property values is, big wine industry. They're going to go up by a huge amount. And then if that gets spread between that small part of the pie for the rest of the primary producers, guess who's going to be paying for it? It's going to be the people at the lower end. The mum and dads are going to be paying for the big increase that some of the big wine industries had, which, they're not complaining, they're happy to pay it. So when you look at the levers and what changes, it's really important to understand what you're voting on. As a result, the one lever we did choose to use was our fixed charge increase. and our fixed charge increase was the only lever we had that could reduce that load and an even spread. It is really important through this whole process, and I've seen a lot on certain community Facebook pages that have made it seem that the city of Onkaparinga is getting a lot more rates with these big increases. It doesn't matter how we break up that pie, we get the exact same amount of money, and that's been really clear in regard to the community. We're not making any more or any less from those decisions. It's just how we spread that load and make sure our ratepayers are paying it equally, so not one individual is paying more than what they have to. That is a decision we went through a whole process on. We had elected member sessions, we came in back in the chamber, we worked through it really, really strongly. And yes, in any decision in a budget this large and in a city this large, there's going to be some people who win and some people don't, and that may change from year to year. But we've made an informed decision. I think it's time we trust the decision we made in the chamber, trust the recommendations that we had from our officers, and back that decision in. So I can't support this.
Councillor Bray.
Thank you. Yes, most of what, well, I think everything that's been said has been reasonably accurate, but there's one additional issue which seems to have emerged under primary production, which is the problem. According to what we've got, the increase in value of primary production lands roughly match the increase in rates proportionately, according to the report. But based on what the deputation said to us, which I found really interesting, was that his contention was that due to land sales for residential rezoning, whatever, the number of primary production properties has actually fallen, possibly significantly. So his contention was that there's actually fewer people now to share the burden of providing that same proportion of council rates, which, as the report says, has stayed static in terms of the actual proportion of rates paid. And that's something that at the time of workshops I certainly wasn't aware of, and that to me appears to be the source of the problem. So that anomaly has come in, and unbeknownst to us in a sense, certainly and it's created, not for the big wineries I suppose, but for the smaller landholdings that are still called primary production, a huge amount of pain. So I guess it's up to us as a chamber to decide whether we're going to, and we, in a sense, as councillors work on behalf of our individual ratepayers. The organisation does a job of managing the rates, and over the years has done an exceptionally good job, in my opinion. Rating is something that this council generally, in terms of complaints and issues, it's just not an issue. Here and there it is, but in general, I think we do a really good job. And I think in this case, an anomaly has come up, and we have to decide whether we're going to make the effort to look after the people who've been affected by this. And I think we should. I'm happy to wait for this to come back, but when it comes back, I would still support the 20% option, just as a matter of, I don't know what the word is, ethics, I suppose, or a moral approach to equity in terms of what people can expect. So, I mean, I'll support this, but I look forward to being able to try and address this anomaly. Thank you.
Councillor Eaton, would you like to close debate? Oh, sorry. Just before you do, Councillor Jamieson, did you have final comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to add a few sorts of things. And I think it's very unusual that we're debating on something that's been brought into the chamber from an outside, an outside site. So Onkaparinga Watch, I find that very, very disappointing. And I'm seeing some things around here as well. But I think that if we've got this problem, and this problem is so great, and I think I agree that we've got to look at it, having a look at it. We've now spent it, but only 3 primary producers out of 2,053 have actually complained. Now, do we react in other sites. For example, if we have something else happening there, we've got 3 out of 2,500 people say A and the others don't, well, where do we normally go? We've got to listen to that majority. But I do understand that the capital value on their properties has gone up, which I guess anybody with a house likes to see that as well. And that's created this problem. But I think we'll be definitely looking at it anyway. But I just don't see the 3 out of 2,053, and a lot of the people on the land aren't very slow in telling you what's what if they're really upset. So I just put that into the thinking here, where we go from now. Thank you.
Councillor Eaton.
Just in conclusion, look, I was on the finance working group, and we actually were the ones that looked at the long-term financial plan, and the council's committed to that particular plan. And what I'm hoping out of this is we'll see what the implications are with those alternatives and where certain projects might have to be cut. So it's in the sense of good financial management and having the time just to discuss this issue and come up with a better proposal. That's why I put this up. Thank you.
Put the motion to vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried.